The burn scar twisted across her left hand like a cruel map, puckered and pink, stretching from wrist to knuckle. Ruth Brennan held it against her skirt as the stagecoach rattled toward Larkspur, Montana, trying to make it disappear. Tried to make all of herself disappear. She was 34 years old, traveling to marry a man she had never met, carrying a lie in her carefully written letters. She had told him she was a widow. She had told him she could cook and sew. She had told him she was healthy and capable. She had not told him about the fire. She had not told him about the scars that covered her left side, hidden now beneath layers of cotton and wool. She had not told him that her own family had called her unmarriageable, that her sister had whispered she would frighten children, that the man she had once loved had walked away without a word after seeing what the flames had done. The stagecoach hit a rut. Ruth's hand slammed against the window frame. Pain shot up her arm. She bit down hard to keep from crying out. When the coach finally stopped in Larkspur, she stepped down into cold October air. The town was small, rough-edged, built from timber and hope. A dozen buildings lined the main street. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already white with early snow. A man stood waiting near the depot. Tall, broad across the shoulders, his dark hair showing gray at the temples. He wore a clean shirt and a worn leather coat. His face was weathered but kind, his eyes steady and brown. He removed his hat as she approached. "Miss Brennan." His voice was low, careful. "Yes." Her throat felt dry. "Mr. Callahan?" "Daniel." He offered his hand. She hesitated, then gave him her right hand only. His grip was warm and brief. He did not seem to notice her hesitation. Or perhaps he was too polite to mention it. "I have a wagon ready," he said. "The ranch is about an hour north." She nodded, unable to speak. He collected her single trunk as if it weighed nothing and led her to a sturdy wagon hitched to two bay horses. The ride was quiet at first. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. Ruth kept her scarred hand tucked beneath her shawl. "I appreciate you coming all this way," he said after a while. "I know Montana's a far cry from Pennsylvania." "I needed the change," she answered carefully. He glanced at her then, something unreadable in his expression. "We all need that sometimes." The ranch appeared as the sun dropped low, painting the valley gold. A solid log house stood among tall pines, smoke curling from its chimney. A barn, a chicken coop, corrals that stretched toward open pasture. 30 head of cattle grazed peacefully. It looked like the kind of place a person could breathe. Daniel helped her down from the wagon. His hands were careful, respectful. He did not touch her longer than necessary. Inside, the house was clean and orderly. A fire burned in the stone hearth. The furniture was simple but well made. Everything spoke of a man who lived deliberately, who valued what he had. "I prepared the bedroom upstairs for you," he said. "We can marry tomorrow if you're willing. The preacher rides through on Fridays. But if you need more time, tomorrow is fine," Ruth said quickly. Waiting would only make it harder. That night, she stood before the small mirror in the bedroom and slowly unbuttoned her dress. The scars covered her left side from shoulder to hip, a landscape of damaged skin, some smooth and shiny, some rough and ridged. The fire had happened 3 years ago, a kitchen accident, oil that caught and spread faster than screaming. She had survived, but the woman she had been had not. She buttoned the dress again and sat on the edge of the bed, her scarred hand resting in her lap. Tomorrow she would marry Daniel Callahan, and tomorrow night, he would see what she truly was. She closed her eyes against the tears that wanted to come. In the morning, they rode to town in silence. The church was small and smelled of pine. The preacher was an old man with gentle eyes. 2 witnesses were pulled from the general store. The ceremony was brief. Daniel's voice was steady as he spoke his vows. Ruth's trembled. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Daniel kissed her cheek softly, as if she were made of glass. They returned to the ranch as the afternoon sun slanted through the trees. Daniel carried her trunk upstairs. Ruth stood in the kitchen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Evening came. They ate a quiet supper. Daniel washed the dishes without being asked. The fire crackled. Shadows stretched across the floor. Finally, Ruth stood. Her hands shook. "I need to tell you something," she said. Daniel turned from the hearth, his expression open, waiting. She swallowed hard. "I was not entirely honest in my letters." His face did not change. He simply nodded once, giving her space to continue. "I am not just a widow." Her voice cracked. "I am scarred. Badly. from a fire. She held up her left hand, letting him see it fully for the first time. It is not just my hand, she whispered. It covers my side, my shoulder. I am, her throat closed. I am not what you expected. I am not worth marrying. The silence stretched long and terrible. Then Daniel crossed the room in 3 slow steps. He stood before her, close but not touching. That's for me to decide, he said quietly. Ruth stared at him, her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. Daniel's eyes held hers, steady and calm, as if she had not just shown him the truth that had driven others away. You don't understand, she whispered. It's not just my hand. The scars, I heard you. His voice remained gentle but firm. And I'm telling you, Ruth, that's for me to decide. Not your family. Not anyone who hurt you before. Me. She felt tears rising hot and fast. You should see them first. Before we. He stepped back slightly, giving her room. Then show me. Her hands shook as she reached for the buttons of her dress. She had never undressed in front of a man, not even the one she had once thought she would marry. The shame felt heavier than cloth. But Daniel turned away. Not like this, he said quietly, facing the window. Not because you think you owe me proof. When you're ready, if you're ready, that's when I'll see. But I won't make you bare yourself like your livestock at auction. Ruth's hands froze. Something inside her chest cracked open. I married you, he continued, still looking out at the darkening valley. I gave you my name. I meant those vows, Ruth. In sickness and health. For better or worse. You think scars change that? They changed everything before, she said, her voice barely audible. He turned then, his face serious. Then those people were fools. She sank into the chair by the fire, her scarred hand pressed against her mouth. Daniel crouched before her, not touching, just present. I lost my wife 4 years ago, he said. Fever took her in 3 days. I held her while she burned up from the inside. I washed her body for burial. I dug the grave myself because I couldn't stand the thought of anyone else touching her. Ruth lowered her hand, listening. She was beautiful, he continued. But that's not why I loved her. I loved her because she laughed at my bad jokes. Because she sang while she worked. Because she made this house feel like home. His voice roughened. When she died, I thought I'd never want anyone here again. But 4 years alone teaches a man what matters. He met Ruth's eyes. What matters is partnership, he said. Kindness. Somebody to face the hard days with. I don't need perfect. I need real. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know how to be a wife anymore. I don't even know if I can. We'll figure it out, he said simply. Together. No rush. No expectations. Just 2 people learning each other. That night, Ruth slept alone in the upstairs bedroom. But for the first time since the fire, she did not cry herself to sleep. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She dressed quickly and came downstairs to find Daniel at the stove, his sleeves rolled up. I usually cook my own breakfast, he said, not turning around. But I made enough for 2 if you're hungry. She sat at the table, still uncertain. He placed a plate before her. Bacon, eggs, toasted bread. Simple food, but prepared with care. They ate in comfortable silence. After breakfast, he showed her the ranch properly. The chickens that needed feeding each morning. The cow that needed milking. The garden plot, now empty for winter, that would need planting in spring. I'm not asking you to do all this, he said. But I thought you should know what's here. We can divide the work however makes sense. Ruth watched him carefully. He did not order. He did not assume. He offered. I can cook, she said. And I can sew. My right hand works fine, and my left is stronger than it looks. Then we'll manage well enough. Over the following days, they built a rhythm. Daniel worked the ranch. Ruth managed the house. They cooked together in the evenings, their movements gradually synchronizing. He taught her how to milk the cow. She taught him how to make proper biscuits. Small moments of ease began to appear. Daniel's quiet humor surfaced, dry observations about stubborn cattle or the neighbor's rooster that crowed at midnight. Ruth found herself almost smiling. But the scars remained hidden. She dressed in the dark. She kept her left side turned away. The vulnerability of being truly seen still felt too dangerous. 2 weeks after their marriage, a cold rain swept across the valley. Daniel came in soaked from checking fence lines, shivering hard. Ruth heated water and brought him towels. Get those wet clothes off before you catch your death, she said, her voice sharper than intended. It was the voice of someone who had watched illness take people she loved. Daniel looked at her with surprise, then something softer. Yes, ma'am. He changed in the bedroom. When he came down in dry clothes, she had hot coffee waiting and a blanket warmed by the fire. You don't have to mother me, he said gently. I'm not. She wrapped the blanket around his shoulders. I'm being your wife. His hand covered hers briefly. The touch was warm and sent an unfamiliar feeling through her chest. That night, as they sat by the fire, Daniel spoke quietly. I want you to know something, Ruth. I don't expect you to share my bed until you're ready. Maybe that's never. Maybe that's someday. Either way, I'm not going anywhere. Ruth's throat tightened. Most men wouldn't be so patient. Then most men are idiots. She almost laughed. It came out as a soft, broken sound, but it was close enough. The next morning, she woke to find a small package on the kitchen table. Inside was a pair of soft leather gloves, lined with wool. They fit perfectly over her scarred hand. Daniel appeared in the doorway. Thought they might help with the cold, he said simply. Ruth pressed the gloves to her chest, unable to speak. He started to turn away, but she stopped him. Daniel. He paused. Thank you, she said. For everything. He smiled then, a real smile that reached his eyes. You're welcome. But that afternoon, everything changed. A rider came up the road, a woman in a fine coat, her hair perfectly arranged beneath her hat. She dismounted with practiced grace and walked toward the house like she owned it. Daniel, she called. His face went pale. Ruth's stomach dropped. She knew that look. She had seen it before on the face of the man who had left her. The woman reached the porch, her eyes sweeping over Ruth with cool assessment. I heard you got married, she said to Daniel. I had to see for myself. Daniel stepped forward, his body angling slightly in front of Ruth. Catherine, what are you doing here? The woman, Catherine, smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Is that any way to greet an old friend? We're not friends, Daniel said flatly. We haven't been for 4 years. Catherine's gaze shifted to Ruth, assessing her from head to toe with the precision of someone used to finding flaws. So this is the mail-order bride. How practical. Ruth felt the familiar heat of shame rising in her chest. She tucked her scarred hand behind her back instinctively. You need to leave, Daniel said, his voice low and hard in a way Ruth had never heard. Catherine laughed lightly. I rode 2 hours to get here, Daniel. The least you could do is offer me coffee. She looked at Ruth. Surely your new wife knows how to be hospitable. The words were polite, but the tone carried poison. Ruth straightened her spine. She had survived fire. She had survived rejection. She would not cower before this woman's cruelty. I'll make coffee, she said quietly, and walked into the house. Inside, her hands shook as she worked the stove. Through the window, she could see Daniel and Catherine talking on the porch, their voices too low to hear. Catherine gestured dramatically. Daniel's face remained stone. Ruth poured 3 cups and carried them outside on a tray. Her scarred hand trembled slightly, but she kept it steady. Thank you, Daniel said, taking a cup. His eyes held an apology. Catherine accepted hers without acknowledgement, still focused on Daniel. I made a mistake, she said. When I left, I was angry about Margaret, about how you shut everyone out after she died. But I've had time to think. Don't. Daniel's voice cut like a blade. Don't rewrite history, Catherine. I'm trying to apologize. No, you're not. He set his cup down. You're trying to see if there's anything left worth taking. Catherine's perfect composure cracked slightly. That's not fair. You told me I was broken, Daniel said. You said I was too damaged to love anyone again. You said I should sell this ranch and stop hiding in the mountains like a coward. Those were your words. Ruth's chest tightened. She understood now. This was the woman who had abandoned him when he was grieving. I was hurt, Catherine said. You chose your dead wife over me. I chose grief over your selfishness, Daniel corrected. There's a difference. Catherine's eyes flashed. She turned to Ruth. Did he tell you? About how he spent a year barely speaking. How he drove everyone away. He told me he lost someone he loved, Ruth said quietly, and that he needed time to heal. That's not a failing. That's being human. Catherine's mouth thinned. How noble. And what are you hiding, I wonder? Why would a woman travel across the country to marry a stranger unless she had nowhere else to go? The words struck their target. Ruth felt her face flush, but Daniel moved between them in one swift step. That's enough, he said, his voice deadly calm. You need to leave. Now. Daniel. Now, Catherine. Something in his tone made Catherine step back. She looked between them, her expression hardening. "You'll regret this," she said. "She's clearly damaged goods." Daniel's hand found Ruth's scarred one and held it gently. "Then I guess we're a perfect match." Catherine stared at their joined hands, her face twisting with anger. Then she turned and walked to her horse without another word. She mounted and rode away, back straight, pride intact. The silence she left behind felt heavy. Ruth pulled her hand free, shame burning through her. "She's right. I am damaged. You could have." "Stop." Daniel turned to face her fully. "Catherine is a woman who can't stand seeing other people happy because she's miserable inside. Her opinion means nothing to me." "But she was right about one thing," Ruth whispered. "I did come here because I had nowhere else to go. My family couldn't stand looking at me. The man I thought I'd marry left without a word after the fire. I answered your advertisement because I was desperate. And I sent that advertisement because I was lonely," Daniel said. "We both came to this marriage with our own reasons. That doesn't make it less real." Ruth shook her head, tears spilling over. "You deserve someone whole. Someone beautiful. Someone, Ruth." He cupped her face gently with both hands, making her look at him. "You are whole. The fire took your skin, not your worth. And you are beautiful. When you smile, when you concentrate on cooking, when you wrap blankets around me like you're afraid I'll disappear." "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake." "Then we'll be scared together," he said. "Because I'm terrified every day that you'll realize you deserve better than a grieving rancher who lives in the middle of nowhere." She stared at him, seeing the truth in his eyes. He was as vulnerable as she was. Slowly, with shaking hands, Ruth reached for the buttons of her dress. "You don't have to," Daniel started. "I know," she said, "but I want you to see me. All of me." She unbuttoned the dress and let it slip from her left shoulder. The scars were revealed in the afternoon light, pink and white, twisted and smooth, covering her skin like a storm had passed through and left its marks. Daniel looked. He did not flinch. He did not turn away. He reached out slowly, giving her time to stop him, and placed his hand gently over the worst of the scarring on her shoulder. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Sometimes," she whispered. "When it's cold. Or when I move wrong." He nodded. Then he leaned forward and pressed his lips softly to the scarred skin. Ruth gasped, tears streaming freely now. "You are my wife," Daniel said quietly. "Every part of you. And I'm honored that you trust me enough to show me." She pulled her dress back up with shaking hands and threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring quiet words of comfort. When she finally calmed, he pulled back just enough to see her face. "I love you," he said. "I didn't plan to. I thought this would be a practical arrangement. But somewhere between burnt biscuits and your terrible jokes about the chickens, I fell in love with you." Ruth laughed through her tears. "My jokes aren't terrible. They're awful," he said, smiling. "But they're mine now." She kissed him then, fully and without hesitation. He responded with careful tenderness, as if sealing a promise. That spring, Ruth planted the garden while Daniel repaired the fence line. Wildflowers bloomed across the valley in waves of color. The scars on her hand caught the sunlight as she worked the soil, but she no longer tried to hide them. In town, when people stared, Daniel would take her scarred hand in his and hold it openly. The whispers faded after a while. The Callahans became just another ranch family, working hard and loving harder. On warm evenings, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set behind the mountains. Ruth leaned against Daniel's shoulder, his arm around her waist. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked once. "Marrying me?" He kissed the top of her head. "Every single day," he said. She pulled back, startled. He grinned. "I regret that I didn't find you sooner." She swatted his arm, laughing, and he caught her hand, the scarred one, and brought it to his lips. "You're worth everything," he said seriously. "Every scar, every fear, every moment of doubt. You're worth it all." Ruth believed him. Finally, fully, she believed him. And in that belief, she found something she thought the fire had taken forever. She found herself again.